While sunk to a 19-month low. But my next guest says whether they will dip below the 6 handle this year is unclear, even with a rate cut. Joining us to discuss is Bess Freedman. She's the chief executive officer at Brown Harris Stevens. And Bess, it's a great time to check in with you. What I've heard welcome is people in the housing market. The home builder stocks again are doing great, but a lot of the realtors are saying we're surprised traffic hasn't picked up a little bit more based on this drop in rates already.
Yeah, I think nice to see you, Kelly, by the way. Always nice to be on the show. It's unfolded gradually. Over the summer, we started to see a pickup. Mortgage applications have increased, but very slowly, and it's going to take time. I do think that this Fed cut will help. It could be beneficial, but it will unfold gradually and will help the housing market eventually, because I think, mortgage rates will continue to come down. They're now in the low sixes. They were at 8% last year. And so a lot of experts are saying that by 2025, they will be in the 5%. For a 30-year, and I think that's all positive news for people who are looking to buy right now.
Some advocates have said, listen, if we get lower rates, if we start to get more inventory into the market, maybe sellers feel like there's somewhere else for them to go, then you could see existing inventory better compete with new home sales where builders have been buying down mortgage rates. So, but I'm not seeing that in the market yet, right? Because I still see the builder stocks at all-time highs and not much of a delta in terms of the volume of people showing up for listings.
It's starting to happen, but it's very slow. It's been incremental. And I think sellers are we're getting more listings little by little. And I think the more that we start to see mortgage rates come down and steady and the economy is good and growing, this is an optimistic gesture when the Fed cuts interest rates right now. They haven't done that in 4 years. So I think that will inspire more sellers to put their homes on the market, because when they look to buy a new home, rates at 5 or 6% is not so crazy to them. And I think that we'll start to see it. It's just not going to be dramatic, and people like a big dramatic story, but it's going to take time.
So this is so ironic, because our prior markets guest says he doesn't want a dramatic half-point cut because that spooks investors. But I hear you and I think, well, maybe the housing market and people in that would love a big dramatic half-point rate cut.
I think we'll take whatever we can get. It's hard to say, but it's sort of like what Milton Friedman says, when Fed changes policy, it's like turning on a water tap, but it doesn't begin to run for about 6 months or a year or whatever it is. It's going to take time. So it's a positive aspect that the Fed is going to cut rates. And it will be good for, cars, for credit cards, for borrowing, for small businesses. It's just good news. It's optimistic because the economy has been doing very well. And so for the Fed to do this sends positive messages, particularly in the housing market.
Last question for people who have been stymied trying to buy a home or trying to figure out how long these kind of current conditions are going to last. And we hear anecdotally places like Miami where things seem softer, maybe even Texas. What do you think is going to happen on a national basis in the next 6 months, kind of into the spring selling season here?
I think it's going to be similar to what we're seeing overall. It's going to take time. Inventory is still really challenged in areas like Miami and Palm Beach and Connecticut. And I think that's going to take time for sellers to get into the market again. But they will do that as the economy picks up, if there's growth, if rates come down. Those challenges, all real estate is very local. And so it just depends. Like, for example, in New York City, we have ample supply. And, it takes time for people to feel comfortable to get into the market. And those areas have been stymied by lack of inventory. And so that will take time for it to change. But I do believe, the next year or so, we're going to see a little bit of a different housing market.
All right, a little more buyer-friendly, perhaps. Bess, thanks for your time. Appreciate it. On the eve of a big Fed decision, Bess Freedman with Brown Harris Stevens.